That means I must be super cheap then. This episode of Getting Table is brought to you by Valhalla Hobby. Use code TABLE to get 5% off your first order over $100. Please consider becoming a Patreon for $2 a month. Join us for the live recordings as JP and Shay are doing right now.
Brought to you by some guys on the internet.
This is Getting Tabled.
With your hosts Jason the Bruce,
You guy!
George the Yang,
I hope you're all entertained by my inaptitude.
Jason aka Major Socks.
We've been doing this and talking about various stuff. One of the stuff.
Now sit back, relax, and get tabled.
Hello, future people, and welcome to episode 145 of Getting Tabled with your host who refuses to drink any beverage on camera, Major Socks.
That's about it.
During the intro, all the rest of us drank something. You just
I'm
sat there
sorry.
and stared at the camera.
Yep, we're all
I
here.
know.
We're all here.
Yep.
And when I say all of us, we have a special guest. We have Owen from, and I'm going to say this wrong, but I'm going to say Immanetize Games.
You nailed it.
Oh,
And hello. Thank you for having me.
Talk nerdy to me.
I was so expecting that to be completely different.
No, it said like it looks. I didn't have you do the last name because I don't even want to know.
Yeah, so we got a special guest on. This is actually somebody that we connected to through one of our Patreons. One that may or may not have taunted during the Patreon questions at some point. We'll get to that later. We're not going to be pointing any fingers at Shay at all. Owen, let's start by telling us what you're currently working on, even though there's a logo in the background they can all see.
Fair enough. So two things. One, I kind of contractually obligated to do the obvious one. So working on some models for a game called Sunshard Embren. We may or may not be talking about that later. So, it's weird when you make your own game. So much what I do is like quote unquote studio work, and I haven't had a chance to really paint just for fun. And finally have some time to actually do that. Also got some. It's a game called Trilaterum by a company called Trenchcoat Miniatures that's local to Massachusetts. They do a really fun 15 millimeter sci-fi skirmish game. It is just so fun. It is very homage to like vintage 40K, and also does some crazy stuff like there's a mecha emu army to invade space New Zealand. Very goofy, very wacky. The price point is absurd. Starters are I think $35 for a full army. It's all 3D printed. So Tim's a good guy who runs the company.
We're talking about that more when we get to hobby time. I want to know about space emus.
Absolutely,
I must know about my Lord and Masters.
So yeah, oh, go ahead, Bruce. Sorry.
No, you're right.
Well, you're probably more prepared than I am because,
Because I'm me.
So, Owen, what got you into gaming? I mean, first and foremost.
Yeah, great question. So, you can probably see in my face, I'm not the youngest person on the planet, or probably even on this podcast. I got into Magic the Gathering in the 90s, as all the cool kids did. And at my local game store, saw a really cool game called Necromunda, and went, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life, and played that hard for about a year until I discovered music and dating, and totally put it aside for 7-8 years. Got out of college, started working a full-time job. A bunch of my friends had joined the military around 2001. They all finished their tours, came back, we started hanging out, and wanted to do something that wasn't just going to the bar every night, both for the sake of our livers and our wallets, and all decided to get back into Warhammer 40K, which then we decided, no, that was a terrible idea, and got into War Machine and Hordes, and then it was all downhill from there. So, and here I am.
So generationally, that sounds about the same time frame for me. So what is this music and dating you were talking about?
So you can
Magic
you can
the
see
Gathering
behind
doesn't
me,
fit with that.
No, it didn't, which is why I gave it up.
All of the Magic the Gathering people are going to throw hate at me for that.
Financially, probably not the best. So I have a Mid 90s Mexican P base on my wall. Loved that thing, got a ton of life out of it. I traded my entire Magic the Gathering collection, which included full play sets of dual lands as well as some mocks. So financially, I probably made the wrong decision, but no regrets.
Yeah, fair enough. Magic the Gathering is one of those things where the fact that it's still around and hundreds of times larger now than it was probably says more about the quality of the game than anything else could. It's also the one that, let's be fair, everybody throws shade at, whether they play it or not.
Yeah, I mean, being the big dog in the house, that's gonna be part of the beast. I mean, I like to joke that, half of being a fan of Games Workshop is hating Games Workshop, and it kind of feels like that online, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's pretty accurate.
So in the past, we always kind of talk to people about what got them into the hobby, and 90% of the people come from exactly the same direction. I think the man down here, Socks, is the only exception to this rule so far. You
never touched Games Workshop.
Ever.
Really?
Never.
Wow.
And he started in
He's-
historicals.
He is
Okay.
lying to you. He has totally touched it. He has a skink priest.
I think
That's
because we
the only
forced him
miniature
to
I've ever
make it.
gotten of Games Workshop. That's the only one.
And that was only because the Patreon chose that model.
It's true.
It's for a painting competition, but between the three of us that we need to restart at the beginning of next year at some point.
Hopefully
kind of
after I
things
move,
happen.
if I have to dope this issue out, maybe.
Fun.
We'll see.
But I mean, you kind of you started to the side, but I would say that Magic the Gathering is not that different from Warhammer, really. Not in the grand scheme of where you've come from. And then realistically, in miniatures, you've started at Necromunda, which is GW.
Yeah, so I'd actually say, from a rules perspective, War Machine felt a lot more like Magic the Gathering than Warhammer did, insofar as you could kind of do your wombo combo and win the game instantly, given the win condition of if you kill the enemy Warcaster, you win. That felt a little bit more like Magic to me. I mean, Warhammer, when I played briefly in second edition, was just wacky. It felt more like an RPG. When I came back to fourth or fifth, it was a little bit of a different animal.
Yeah.
I didn't really resonate with me, nor my play group, which, I mean, hey, whatever works for people. I do feel like I get where you're coming from now, but I think and I'm not a student of Games Workshop anymore. What was it, 7th or 8th edition 40K, when they really changed things up? I think it did get a lot more accessible and more Magic the Gathering-y.
I think that's fair.
I've been around games for a while, and I've never realized that connection of War Machine to Magic the Gathering like that before until you just said it. It's quite brilliant.
I think there's kind of two tracks of people in wargaming. One is people that really gravitate to the hobby. They saw that Mike McVeigh, Horus and the Emperor mural. They want to do that, but tell their own stories on the table. And there's people that really love the puzzle of it. They're a little bit less interested in the hobby, but the game itself, solving that puzzle, that really gets to them. So you've got, in my experience, it has to be the Fantasy Flight players, the War Machine players that kind of gravitate over here. Obviously, X-Wing, not a whole lot of hobby to do. It's a pre-painted miniatures game. War Machine, I don't know how it was in Australia, at least in the States, until Adepticon laid down the law with no, you must be painted to play at the convention. It's rare to see fully painted armies. And I think that you can say, pros or cons to that, but I think from a player motivation, it really is kind of two different groups of people.
In Australia, I never played War Machine, just for the record. I almost did at one point, and the community kind of turned me off it. It is what, well,
yeah,
two or three members, but isn't that always the way? But from what I saw, I always saw painted armies. It didn't necessarily mean that's what it always was. It's just what I saw. In Australia, having a fully painted army is very much, no, you should definitely do this, which I think is kind of universal. To the point where I think sometimes it's too strong, that message. Because it turns off new players sometimes.
I think it's changing.
It has been getting better.
It was really, really hard to get over that skill gap from I am completely new to wargaming to I have a painted army 20 years ago. Because at best, you were looking at the pages of a white dwarf and trying to copy step by step the results of a painting with no idea what the intermediate step looked like. In the age of YouTube with videos, I think it's a lot easier. And let's be honest, the hobby tools have gotten a lot better. Like, as much as people have nostalgia for it, the paint 20 years ago kind of sucked.
It really
Contrast paint comparatively is really awesome. So I think it's easier than ever to get something painted. Now, people will still struggle with, geez, this doesn't look like, to name drop a YouTuber, Miniax paint job on my first try. Well, it's never going to. It takes practice to get there.
Muscle
but
memory.
You can get something that looks pretty good a lot easier now than you used to be able to.
Yeah,
I think another contrast.
Yeah, I think another thing that probably you can relate to, since like I said, it's a similar sounding time frame. There's a lot of gatekeeping on how things were done back then too. It was figure it out for yourself. I'm not going to waste my time kind of mentalities with people.
Yeah, I think I'm lucky in that I missed a lot of that. It was at least speaking only from my experience. When I was a kid, older players were very welcoming to, hey, younger people are playing this. This is great. You're not just doing Magic the Gathering. Fantastic. Someone I can beat up on a Necromunda. Isn't this wonderful? I pieced out for a while. War Machine definitely had a community. And I would say that the two truisms, and just for the record, I loved War Machine. I was a playtester for War Machine Mark II. I was briefly a competitive play judge. So just all cards on the table on my experience with it. The two things I saw across America where everyone who was a consistent War Machine player could tell you one or more bad experiences about someone trying to win at all cost. But they would also tell you how much they loved their local press ganger, which was the person that organized events. They had a really, really strong community of volunteers. And I think that did wonders for the game. And I think, I'm not a business person, but when you look at when Mark III really started to fall off from a retail perspective, it was after they disbanded their volunteer core. I think that, my belief is people buy games from people in general. Obviously, we're doing podcasts. We probably are the exceptions there, but that seems to be the case most of the time. And I think when you stop having that person to buy from, you stop seeing sales.
I think in today's world, while yes, those volunteer programs definitely still have a very strong place in the community, but for the games that can't afford to run those, it's your Guerrilla Miniature Games, it's your Miniax, especially with the smaller players, where they have like an actual passion for the indie side of things.
Oh yeah. No, I think it's getting some community champions too. So maybe it's not a formal volunteer program, but if you can get someone like, I don't know, Shea Wallace to start hyping your game, he's going to tell all his friends. He's a charismatic guy, and suddenly people are going to start picking it. So finding those local community influencers, if not, to your point, larger online influencers, I think that definitely helps.
Yeah, big time. So, there's huge players. I mentioned Guerrilla Miniature Games on tabletops, obviously another one. But they also have platforms that maybe you probably can't afford to get onto. There are other ways to get onto those sites. So, you reach out to what you can.
Yeah, I think, too, from someone who's in that spot, without a very careful business plan, even if someone like myself, if hypothetically Ash Barker was like, I tried this game, it's the best game in the world, every single person who subscribes to me needs to go buy it now, I wouldn't have capacity to sell that many games. So I think it definitely is one step at a time. I think 3D printing does make scalability easier. A small team, and biggest props in the world to the team who are doing Trench Crusade. $2 million for a small group of guys. And if that was conventional manufacturing, I think that would have been really, really hard to make that work. I think with 3D printing and being able to scale that out, that becomes a tractable problem.
Yeah. And having the option there for people that can actually print their own at maybe not the cheapest price in the market, but I personally think a fairly priced one. It's more expensive than like a lot of things that you'll find on My Mini Factory, but it's also somebody trying to make some money, so I have no problem with that.
Well, and you have to pay for the rules development. You have to pay for the concept art. That's not free. I can tell you that firsthand.
Yep.
So if you're just trying to create a public domain character from a role-playing game and put it on my Manufactory, you can sell it for 99 cents and still make a profit due to volume. If you're trying to create a bespoke thing for your game, I think people should be willing to accept, okay, this is going to be pricier than that 99 cents, but there's a reason for that, and it's not just greed.
Yeah.
Well, there's like a magic number too of like the bespoke thing. Like Games Workshop has luckily I guess in your case has attracted the community into $40 for a single specific special mini is an acceptable price. I did a quick little review of another company where it's 3D printed. It's not Sergeant Slaughter. It was like $15 with shipping. Like, and it's the same kind of character, same kind of mini. So, but they're all a 3D printed shop. So I think having that kind of technology is probably a huge benefit. But also, what Games Workshop has done for the community as far as establishing norms probably helps.
Oh yeah.
And the whole availability like want versus availability argument in the Western society as well. Like if people want your stuff, you can kind of price it accordingly.
I think one thing as a consumer, it can be frustrating dealing or experiencing Games Workshop prices. I'll put it that way. But you put yourself in the shoes of a retailer. It's a huge price if you buy from GamesWorkshop.com, but if you go to your local game store, Games Workshop still needs to make money, and they're probably giving, a 40 or 50% discount, so your game store can get that other piece of the pie. So I do keep that in mind, and I don't know how it is by you all, but at least for me, my LGS will also discount that 10 or 20% because I know they need to compete with online retailers. So it's the nominal MSRP. I don't think I've paid nominal MSRP in a very long time, even buying directly from a brick and mortar.
So back in the day when I was doing the hustle, it was anywhere from 40 to 60 of what the MSRP was is what Games Workshop charged you as the store or the distributor, and then you were free to mark up, for your profit margin, stuff like that. So, when you got stores like our sponsor and like the local ones who take that price, knock 10% off, that's super helpful to help the hobby too, I think.
Yeah, and that's part of like when we did our pricing, we wanted to keep in mind a lot of what we're doing is direct consumer. As a 3D printing company, we also want to involve the game stores somehow if we can. So, we, for example, will sell store print licenses. We're not going to sell that to someone via a Patreon so they can sell it on Etsy. We think the stores need to be able to get it. I see so many other 3D printing companies, though, price themselves at the, $8 for a printed model plus shipping level. I don't know how they make money on that if they try to sell that to a game store. That gets painful. So, if you're including that in your business plan, it does definitely affect prices. And I think Trench Crusade might be thinking about that long term, given how they price things, which I think would be smart for them, given the strong community response. So I do know there's been, I haven't had a ton of time to follow it closely. There was some Sturm and Drang around, these minis are so expensive, but I wonder if that's going to be a part of it.
I think, well, I completely understand where those comments come from, especially in today's market. But at the same time, I don't have a problem with the business making money. Also, to be fair, this game has had a lot of people very excited for well over 12 months, and they've known about it. They knew that they could price this accordingly. I mean, someone like you or me, like we don't have that luxury because we don't have the thousands of followers all around the world.
Yes.
Or the hundreds of thousands, probably. And that was before the campaign went live. So we would have to price accordingly.
Yeah, supply and demand can be a real kick in the pants sometimes, but it's the reality we live in, unfortunately.
Yep. Getting back to some of the hey, let's get to know you thing. Do you play D&D? Because this question isn't going to make any sense otherwise.
So I have played D&D. I played 3rd 3.5 and 5. I most recently played Pathfinder, so
Yep.
familiar with a lot of those, but yeah.
What's your go-to racing class then?
Oh, that is a tricky one. So I am the most basic Dark Soul player in the world. I am a human knight with a greatsword.
There's nothing wrong with that. But my personal thing is I always try to do something as different from the last one as I can. So this question doesn't work for me.
My last campaign, I played an investigator in Pathfinder and drove my DM absolutely insane. So then I suggested I play an alchemist, but I'm a chemist by trade, and he suggested no, that's not going to work either. So we are back to fighter, two-handed weapon. Apply violence to problem. If it doesn't solve problem, apply more violence.
Yep. The Marine way.
The best way.
We've also had somebody ask who your favorite Beatle is.
Oh,
I assume they're referring to the band.
I'm the one that asked that question. I'm sorry. It's just
I was keeping them anonymous.
I'm
Was
one
you
of the
referring
hosts.
to the band?
Yes, actually. So, but I mean, there's multiple Beatles. I mean, there's Bumblebee from the original Transformers. There's Herbie. There's the atrocious movie that was just on. So. But I was intending, yes, George, Ringo, Lennon, or...
Oh, I would say probably Harrison or Ted Cord would be my answer there.
I like the Ted Cord. That's a nice deep cut.
Do what I can. Do what I can.
And do you have a favorite author?
Oh, probably William S. Gibson.
Okay, I know who they are, but not overly familiar with them.
Contrary to the sideburns and Elvis hair now, or pseudo Elvis hair, it's not a pomp anymore. I used to be very, very into cyberpunk and industrial music, and have terrible, gigantic jeans in the '90s. I'm painting a picture here, but that was big interest as a kid. But I think the prose holds up.
I was there to remember how popular that look was.
And for those who are wondering, just look up Jinko for the jeans. They're making a comeback.
I actually find it amazing they've come back already. That feels really quick to me. But then again, it was still 30 years ago.
Well, and the 90s were the best. I mean...
Yes, they were.
Yes.
Weren't they socks?
Yes, they were. As a 90s kid, yes, I will say.
I added a little flavour to the end of this one, but the question was, which Power Ranger would you want to be? And then I added, and why is it Tommy?
It would probably be Tommy for the sick flute skills. If my 90s recollection is holding up, but yep. I was not a big fan of Power Rangers. That missed me by probably 1 or 2 years.
That's fair. I was kind of just on the tip of before I was too old to be too cool for it. So basically, as Mighty Morphin stopped, I was like, yeah, no, this is kind of dumb now.
Hey, I think there's nothing wrong with kaiju. I think the Fox Kids-ification of it was the point of like, yeah, and you hit puberty and it's like, okay, like I care way too much about what other people think. I'm gonna pretend I'm too cool for school, and then you hit 21 and it's all rolls off your back.
Back downhill.
Yeah, but then you hit 40 and you stop caring what people think again. So
yeah.
Yeah, until you get kids and then you want to try and pretend to be cool for the kids, and it doesn't work. In fact, if anything, it makes it worse.
So true.
Bruce, I intentionally go out of my way to embarrass Sam, just FYI.
That is the right way. I am also non-kidless, so I have no kids. So I get to embarrass my nieces instead.
Awesome. I've got a 1-year-old, but he is nonverbal, so I can't embarrass him by using like the Gen Alpha slang or anything. But someday.
Eventually.
Wait till you have a teenager. It's glorious.
I'll have 3 next year.
Mercy.
Oh, God. And
on next year's episode, watch Socks lose his hair.
true.
He keeps it that short, nobody will notice.
It's true. And to
You
keep
have
the
no
gray
choice.
hairs away. I mean, that way no one can see my gray hairs.
Interestingly, changing subject away from Owen for a second, when you eventually retire, are you just going to have the longest mullet ever known to mankind?
No. My
You're
wife.
going to keep it short forever?
No, there's
Because of the
there's
wife.
actually a new hair trend in Florida. It's called like a slapback or something like that. But it's like you shave your entire head except for the back part where the mullet is, and that just goes down.
Please
Like
never do
side
that.
stop every. That's a Florida thing now. So
It is a Florida thing, and no, I'm not going to be doing that.
There is a lot of Florida things most of the world will never want to do.
Yes.
Oh dear.
True.
What would your alt mode be? We're still going through the Patreon stuff.
My alt mode. Oh, I
So
don't.
they're talking Transformers here.
Oh, okay. Got it. Thank you. Sorry. I took me a second there. Oh, mercy. Probably a charger.
Nice. I like that. Yeah.
I like this question.
Who is
your
dream?
dream?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, who is your dream RPG table, and what game, and who is the GM?
Oh, that is a tough question. Let's think about this for 1 second. So, what would be an interesting one? If I could play a role-playing game with anybody, it would probably be Winston Churchill, Teddy Roosevelt, and Tupac Shakur.
This is a
And
really
I think
cool
we play
looking
Curse
table.
Estrada.
Who's running the game?
Oh, that is a tough one. We need someone appropriate for that with some gravitas. Let's think here. I mean, we could go for the obvious answer of someone like Gary Gygax. I feel like that's too on the nose. What if we did Bob Barker?
That'd be interesting. That'd be very interesting.
The roll is wrong. No.
You've just met Strad. Come on down.
I kind of like the idea of Tupac playing a dwarf or an elf or something, just like completely so far out of his wheelhouse.
I feel like he'd make it work, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Like, creative arts background. I can see it.
Yeah.
Where are we? Oh, here we go. Okay. I can... Yep.
There's still one party hasn't answered yet. What game? Like
Oh.
D&D,
sorry.
Lovecraft Investigation, like Shadowrun.
I mean, obvious answer has to be D&D 3.5 Curse of Strahd.
Yeah, he did say Curse of Strahd.
I do have the terrible New England accent, so I can understand how that just kind of came out in like no R mess there. So
Wait.
pardon that.
My God, I think I actually have that book. Now that I think about it.
It is a delight. It is a classic.
I mean, there's a reason they redid it, right?
No, I virtually had like every 3.0, 3.5 D&D book because I was a store. I got them at cost.
Nice.
So,
Awesome.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. Okay, so here we are. I think you can probably guess who this one was. If you could bring back one faction or theme into NK4 from previous editions War Machine, what would it be? Here we go for the next 30 minutes.
No, I can be a bit long in the tooth of my responses, but this one's easy. The Protectorate of Menoth, Mark IV, absolutely. Would love to see it. They were my boys in Mark II, Mark III, so yeah, would love to see them make a comeback.
I suspect that's why a certain someone has put this in there. I'm guessing that you had this conversation more than once.
Actually, no. So I'm just as surprised that you are, but yeah, easy question.
I'm actually a little kind of shocked at that because I do have a Warmahorde army, and I played it 3 times. It's a 6th painted, and it's Protectorate.
It's classic models. I never want to paint them again. So much filigree, all of the filigree. But they
Yeah, my complaint is all the crap plastic and pewter, mashed together. That was
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think with a model refresh, they could be really interesting. I always like the control armies, the armies that say no. I've always found that really interesting. I could reach over to my desk for Bushido, which we talked about before the show started. I do play the Kinchi, so they are also kind of the like we're gonna play a little bit differently army. So yeah.
okay. I'm gonna go out on a limb here then. Did you like to play Mono Control Blue then?
Blue black, but close enough.
Yeah. People
Blue
like
black
you
is
can
a
just
nice combo.
go away. Go away.
This is why you can't play Shaltari. I'm sorry. No, it's going to be PHL.
Shay likes to joke. It's not so much that I enjoy negative play experiences, it's that I am the negative play experience.
There's one in every playing group, right?
There's got you know what? Sometimes you need someone like that though to keep the other silliness in line.
Look. To be fair, he's not here to defend himself. We should pretend that it's Shay. Who has been making comments, I will say.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Another podcast for Owen to bully me on.
Yeah, he thought you would have said in response to that question, he thought it was going to be the Gators.
Oh yeah, I mean,
I love the Gators.
I did play the Gators a lot. I was on a team so in the States we had a lot of team tournaments, and the local event near me was called Temple Con, which is now Captain Con. They would have a team event every year. So you have 3 people. There were bonuses for playing a shared faction. Bonuses for dressing up. So we would be Team Gator Done. We'd all play the Gators and then dress up like Larry the Cable Guy. We had custom hats, custom shirts. So good times, good memories.
He says he's got nothing for Clan War. I don't remember why that's come up. That's obviously been something that we've commented on at some point.
I think we were joking around at the start, but no, it's yeah.
And then we can't blame him for something. Oh, and then he has a reputation to uphold about buying everything. I suspect that one is.
Yes.
And I think that's it. This is just Jay and JP talking to each other. So Shay and JP talking to each other. Scarlet for the win. Ah, dear. All right. So you're a big fan of dead games. I didn't know that you had a whole podcast dedicated to them. So here we go. Here is the ultimate question. What is your favorite dead game?
Oh. I wish I could tell you that's a hard one.
Editions that have... I'm going to say previous editions doesn't count. That's not part of the question, technically.
So I wouldn't call... people make a big deal out of Old Hammer, and there are some wonderful, wonderful things going on out there with that. I to me, don't see that really as a dead game, particularly with the old world now being out. I think... I'd have to say Dark Age, a game by Dark Age Games, and then later Cool Mini or Not. I really fell in love with that game. I miss it every day. There's a lot of other great dead games. I'm not going to pretend this is anything anyone could ever rank objectively, but absolutely subjectively, I think Dark Age wins.
I think the issue with dead games is there are so many of them that have so much nostalgia attached to them, but in some cases, a lot of that nostalgia blinds you to how simple a game may have been or how little of the game really was there. I think quite famously, Inquisitor was around for such a small amount of time and didn't really get going. But famously, there's a lot of depth there until you start looking deep, and then apparently it doesn't. I've wanted to play Inquisitor for so long. But it's a game that it's really hard to get going. Hence why it didn't really pick up.
Yeah, that was a weird one. The scale being what it was, I think, didn't do it a lot of favors. And being a quasi RPG ?
That's the hard part, I think.
So, like, if you look at a game like Wreck Age from Hyacinth Games, which was around for many years in the States and unfortunately no longer is in production. That was a game that also straddled the tabletop RPG, and I think the biggest challenge it had was people didn't know what to make of it. They didn't know if it was an RPG or a tabletop game. It was kind of both, but the rule set was the same. And I think even something like Inquisitor 28, so the 28 millimeter version of Inquisitor, struggles to get off the ground because it is so local playgroup focused like an RPG.
That makes sense. What would you say you play the most out of them? Necromunda, I suspect, is on that list.
I wish I played more Necromunda than I do. I paint a lot of Necromunda. I plan a lot of Necromunda. I love thinking about Necromunda. And let's be honest. I mean, that's probably about half the hobby is thinking about a game, planning the game, painting the game. I wish I could say playing the game was a larger percent of my hobby. It's not anymore these days. Most of my games these days for dead games tend to be at conventions. I have a really, really solid BattleTech group. I love the guys I play with. We're near a naval base, so we end up having a lot of folks that serve, want to play, and that is a very easy game because it is so low model count. It's easy to pick up and play, and it's easy to keep a campaign going for a long time. But whether I go to Adepticon or Captain Con, Nova Open, I'll usually schedule a bunch of different games. Dark Age is near the top of that list, but an old game from a company called Happy Games Factory called Eden is also probably near the top too.
We've got a couple of players here that used to be really into Eden, and it just never took off here, but they tried multiple times. I think somebody may have picked that up recently. I think it may be coming back again. I could be wrong on that.
Yeah, so Mohand, the main artist from the game, is picking it back up with a company. They're doing some interesting things, so they moved the setting from Europe to America. I'm interested to see where it goes. They've been doing some teasers. They haven't quite gotten to the campaign yet, but yeah, I'm excited to see what that takes off as.
And there's one last question here, which is, what is your favorite mech, and why is it a Super Veritech?
Oh, mercy.
That's not my flavor this time.
What's my favorite mech?
Apparently you do play BattleTech too, but I don't think it has to be from BattleTech.
Yeah, no, it's BattleTech is where most of my mecha comes in. I missed the anime bug, so I have friends who will make Gundam jokes or allusions, and it completely over my head. I am a simple man. I think it would probably have to be the Hunchback. Legs, arms, and an AC-20, done.
That's fair. That's fair. Socks, do you have much of a mech opinion?
No, I've played it a little bit. There's some groups. Where was I at?
Florida,
Illinois, Kansas, Illinois. Can't remember which base it was at. That played some. So I've played a little bit, but not a whole lot. So,
I mean, my favorite mech would be Evangelion, and it's not even going to be close. But that's the anime bug that you never caught. So, get in the robot.
Yeah,
Shinji.
sorry.
Yes, I censored the line. Also, he never actually says that in the show.
You know what? Like, even not being an anime person, Evangelion was something else. That was an interesting last episode, and I know they've done movies to expand past that. I've missed those, but interesting series.
Evangelion, for those that don't know, was a show about very large mechs that had absolutely nothing to do with mechs. That was never what the show was about. That was just what drew you in. And the people that didn't get that really hated that last episode. All right. That comes to the end of our trolling, unless, of course, Shay and JP decide to throw more in the chat at some stage. So
well, we'd have to pay attention to the first, so.
It's true.
So, actually getting into the design of your own game. Have you done like homebrew type stuff before you were doing this, or did you jump into the deep end like I did?
So I jumped into the deep end like you did. I have play tested a lot of games in my lifetime, so I felt confident in kind of like what the playtest process would look like. My friend Andrew and I, who met in graduate school and bonded over War Machine Mark II, and then I introduced him to Dark Age, and he fell completely in love with it. We're talking during the pandemic shutdown, Andrew had been working with some sculptors to get models that would be suitable proxies for unreleased models in Dark Age sculpted, just as a service to the community, which I thought was great. And the models looked fantastic. And he said, I've always had this idea for a game. I'm like, well, that's really cool. He's like, do you think you could help me write some rules for it? And it was, well, my job's kind of slow and I'm still getting paid and I can't go anywhere or do anything. So sure, why not? We'll give it a try. And played around with it. In our first revision, I tried to be very clever and tried to show people how smart I was. And mechanically, it was a very interesting game, and it was an absolute mirthless experience at the table. So I said, well, this makes me feel good about myself, but no one will ever buy it because it's not fun. So went back to basics and said, what do I like to actually play? What are people going to want to play? And made the game that I wanted to play. Around that time, Eden had stopped getting support. Dark Age had stopped getting support. I looked at, in the States, Miniature Market was like the online distributor. There was literally nothing they were selling that I was excited to play. So I said, well, let's actually take this seriously. If nobody's going to make the game I want to play, I'm going to make the game I want to play. And we did that and said, this was really fun. And then, okay, so what's the next step? Let's throw money at it. So Andrew started getting stuff sculpted. And I said, well, this is a little dicey, man. I don't know if I'm ready to throw money at it. So we showed it to some friends, and they went, yeah, this is actually pretty cool. And I was, the sculptor Andrew found, I don't know how he found him. It was incredible and was giving us models for peanuts, which was like, okay, this might actually work. So, okay, do or die moment. We had all the starter sets for the first 4 factions. We started playtesting 10, picked the 4 we thought would have the best shot through the gate. Got everything sculpted, printed it up, went to Captain Con last year and said, okay, I painted them up as best I could. We made demo boards as best I could. Let's give this an honest shake. And if people respond to it, let's keep going. And if they don't, hey, we give it an honest go. Didn't work out. Yep. No harm, no foul. And we got an incredibly positive response. We got some really good feedback, too. We initially envisioned this to being on a 4x4. We did our demos on a 2x2. Everyone went, oh my gosh, another 2x2 game. I'm so happy someone's doing a 2x2 game. And the game, honestly, was better on the 2x2. So it was, okay, cool, great. We'll make that pivot. That one's easy. Did some balance testing, kicking the tires around that, and kind of kept going. And started kind of forming a business plan and, continued the beta testing. We certainly did not get it right 100% out of the gate. We've had to make a lot of subtle changes, but it got to the point of, okay, would a game store buy a print license? And we just went to ArmorCon, where the owner of a game store that runs the con had bought a print license in advance and said, okay, we'll let you sell 20 of these starters in advance. Let's see how many sell. If only 1 or 2 sell, well, maybe we don't go to... He sold out in, I think, the first day. So, okay, we're feeling a little bit better about that. So, and I have no idea if that translates. It's one thing when someone's there showing you the game in person. People buy games from people. So maybe that's a good sign for me. That doesn't necessarily translate over Kickstarter and crowdfunding. So this is kind of the next, let's see how it goes. If the Kickstarter goes well, awesome. We're going to keep doing it. If we don't meet our funding goal, well, that tells us something and we'll adjust accordingly.
Yeah, and that's the benefit of Kickstarter, right? You can invest money, but at some point you have to pull a trigger and see if this works or not. The days of going to a publisher and seeing if you can get backed are gone. And even if, there are still people that go down that route, but at that point you also lose control over what is your baby at that stage. This tells you whether, okay, this is something I can do, or this is probably something I've tried, it didn't work, hey, I gave it a go. I think that's fair, honestly.
Yeah, and I think small game companies too, it's interesting to kind of see how everyone parts it out. I feel like so many companies, it's somebody who is an incredible sculptor that maybe has a buddy that's okay at rules and they try to throw something together. And every team's got its strengths and they are kind of able to get it by otherwise. I'd like to think I'm pretty okay at designing rules. Neither Andrew and I are sculpt, but Andrew is an incredible art director. His big hobby is GMing RPGs, and I think he's a very good storyteller. So I think the universe is very interesting. I think he found someone that makes really incredible models. Just to try to put an actual measurable metric on that, we lost our original sculptor, unfortunately, because he got poached by Games Workshop. So I feel pretty strongly he's pretty okay. It's hard not having a sculptor on the team. It's more expensive for us, but I think we've been lucky in that Andrew's been able to identify and work with and get very good output from people in spite of not having one of us do it. So, I've been having to get by in my inadequate layout skills, but it's good enough. You'll see some video work on the Kickstarter, which is from me. It is not professional, but it's good enough. And I feel like every team needs to kind of pick what am I going to be excellent at and what's good enough to kind of get over the finish line.
No, that's fair. It's a couple of these questions I'd kind of prepared, and I don't think they necessarily apply. But this one, like, is there a strong development community in your area, or did you pretty much have to rely on friends and stuff? Now, obviously, there's a side to this where I now know that you've actually taken it to conventions, and that has definitely helped as part of this. But outside of that, was it literally just relying on what you knew already, or has it largely been, hey, you're my friend, you will do this for me?
I have browbeat a few friends into playtesting with me. There's not a better way to put it. I think one of the things where we got a little discouraged and worried was we initially put out a call to communities we both were in. Hey, we're starting this game. We'd like to get some playtesters, and got a lot of positive feedback, and then put out the rules and nobody said anything. Which was are you just being nice? I think it really is free rules, great, and I have to do work now. So I've had a lot more success. Yeah, and it kind of breaks your heart because you're like, I'd almost feel better if you told me the game was bad. Saying nothing is just like, I think, talking to people in person, one of the things Andrew did, to his great credit, he's a coder by trade. He set up a full working, scalable, because it's linked to a database, TTS environment. So every time we make a rules change, it automatically updates in the TTS. It's been really, really handy for, particularly during COVID, but now even more so, working with people when we can't get in person. We have a really robust way to test that. We do make that available for free too. So if folks are looking for that, happy to send you the instance. If people want to play our game, we are not gonna gatekeep that.
No, 100%. As part of the development process, did you find any? You've had a team, so you've been able to kind of rely on each other. So some of this might be mute, but did you find any particular part of it more challenging than the rest?
The hardest thing for me, as I talked about earlier, was when I initially wanted to write the rules. I think there was part of me that wanted to do something really cool and new and get a lot of praise for doing the cool, new, innovative thing.
Yeah.
And I had some really creative ideas, or in my eyes, creative ideas, that used some really, really fancy math, and I felt really good about it. And it worked. Like to its credit, the math worked out the way it should, but it wasn't fun. And I think rule number 0, 1, 2 through 10 of a game is it has to be fun, or no one's going to play it.
Yeah.
And I certainly, at least for me, missed that at the start and went, this is silly. Andrew, to his credit, was very polite and never told me that, but it was me playing and going, I'm not having a good time, and it being, having the awareness to say, okay, no, these rules need to change. After that, one of the things, I definitely made this game deliberately as a love letter and hopefully a spiritual successor to the game Dark Age. It's my favorite game of all time. It looms large in our development. It is absolutely positively not a copy and paste of Dark Age. None of the factions map one-to-one on Dark Age. The setting, the background, all of that is very different than Dark Age, but the rules will feel very similar to someone who's played Dark Age. I worried a lot, is this too much like Dark Age? Are people going to look at it and go, this is just Dark Age? So there were times I tried to deliberately break away, and I went back and like, no, this is just the right answer to this design problem. So those were kind of my stumbling areas.
I was literally about just to jump in and say, how difficult was it to, do this love letter without making a clone? And
yeah,
it's a very hard line to follow. Yeah.
So like for us, the biggest thing to me was verisimilitude. So like the idea of Dark Age, the tagline was everything dies. So on a critical hit, you just do a wound. On a critical armor failure, you take an extra wound. It's a very, very killy game. That's not our story. Our world is a post-apocalyptic fantasy setting. So imagine Greyhawk in D&D, but the sun exploded. and now there's a necromantic plague everywhere. What would fantasy races do in reaction to that? That kind of drives the story. But on the table, how do you represent that? So mechanically, a critical doesn't just do a wound. It gives you a blight token to represent, hey, some of that protection you have to the plague has been pierced and now you're getting sick. If you ever get up to 3 blight tokens, you're dead. There's factions that can manipulate that. So some to strip blight off, some to actually add more blight to. If you ever get 3 blight tokens, you're out. So I might not be able to pierce your armor, but if I can at least make you get exposed to the blight, that can kill you. So in addition to being an additional win condition, it's how do I, take this, world-defining threat and make sure it's always present on the table. So that was one of the big things we changed. In addition to smaller mechanical things, there's things that made sense in the world of Dark Age, like malfunction rolls, because the whole point there was technology is falling apart. It doesn't work as good as it used to. So you could have a gun blow up in your hand. Didn't make any sense for us, so we just stripped the mechanic from the game. I could go through line by line, but it was a challenge, but it was something that we were mindful of when we did it.
One of the things I've heard many times, I actually joined one of the on-tabletop weekenders at one point, the
nice.
behind-the-scenes one. I got invited because Warren heard that I was developing something and said, we should talk about game development. And one of the things he talked about was knowing when to say no. And what he's talking about is there's something here that you really like, but maybe it doesn't work, or maybe it doesn't fit the theme in your case, and it's knowing when to go, no, that needs to go away. I know that's one of the things I really struggled with as well. One of the earliest ideas I had was that, look, when somebody dies, when somebody crashes, that's it. And I got feedback a few times. It's it kind of feels like that happens too easily. It's yeah, but that's what I want the game to. And it took me a while to say, no, they've got a point. I do need to change this. Yeah. It's just, it feels too easy for everybody to fall. And the game just kind of just stopped at a certain point. It was so it sounds like you kind of experienced a little bit of that as well.
Yeah, and I think going in with a strong idea of what you want the game to be, what your target player base is. So, I designed this for a person like me, where I don't have a ton of free time, and if my friends are going to get together to play a game, the biggest impediment to us getting together is, do I have the peripherals, the widgets, the whatnot to actually play the bloody game? So no special dice, no special measuring widget, no deck of cards I need to play the game. Dark Age had the deck of cards. We totally got rid of that. Anything I need, I should be able to have printed out or available on my phone or tablet. That sounds small, but going in with that as a design philosophy drove us to, I think, solutions to, well, how do we get a secondary objective without having a deck of cards? Okay, let's try a few different, and we landed on one way to answer that question. Our experience was, I wanted something that we could play in an evening on a weeknight. So that drove a lot of the scenario design. That drove how fast do things die, so we can get the game time, once you know the rules, around 45 minutes. When I first started, hey, let's do this, and it was great, but a game took 3 hours. And is that fun? Are people actually going to play that? Probably not. So I think, writing, for me, and this is just the way I work, I wrote everything down. And then I play a game and go through okay, is it doing this? Is it doing this? Is it doing this? And that kind of helped at least get my own thinking about where I wanted to go iteratively to the next step.
No, that makes sense. Socks, I can see you've highlighted a question there for a little while. Do you want to just ask it?
No. It was just something that you already had it. It was about the development in the friends in your area. So it's sort of been asked.
That's fine. I didn't look at what the question was you highlighted, so I was like, I'm going to make Socks ask this question.
Another real quick question. Can you provide a link for us to put in the show notes for the tabletop simulator? Because I've got mine pulled up trying to...
Yeah, absolutely. I will. I would try to do that. It's going to be really clicky-clacky. Once the show's over, I will absolutely send that over them.
No, that's fine. I wanted to ask it now so that one of us can remember at the end.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and obviously for you all, but also any of the listeners, if folks want to play a game in TTS, hit me up. I'm always happy to throw down. It's a really quick game. TTS is fairly easy. I'd like to think our mod makes things super easy. So if anyone wants to check out the game that way, always happy to enable that.
In the show notes, I know for a fact that we will have the website, the Facebook group, and the Discord, all of which are ways that you can get in contact. But we'll probably touch on that a little bit more later. I'm looking at the email, looking at what do I have here. So you got 4 factions that you're starting with.
Mm-hmm.
1, 2, 3, 4. Oh no, the other link there is stories. Never mind. I'm like, what's fables? Fables are stories, Jason.
Actually, so believe it or not, fables are. If you played War Machine, they're going to be similar to mercenaries. They're models that can work for 2 or more factions. They're the legends of the world. Yep. So they're unique characters. They tend to start with the whatever. So it's not. This is Count Von blah blah blah. We tend to leave it a little bit amorphous, so players can fill in the background for whatever they see fit.
Okay, that explains why everything looks so monstrous when you click on that link, and all grayed out. Nice. So to start with, we have the Delvers, the Remnant, the Ruin, and the Shardborn. Now, clearly, the Ruin are the heroes of this game. That's very, very clear from that name.
Absolutely, yes.
Do you want to talk a little bit about how the factions, like what they are?
Yeah, sure. I'll give my my kind of elevator pitch for each of them. So I'll give you a quick background on the world too, because I think that'll place these guys in ways that make sense. So imagine Greyhawk D&D, your standard Pathfinder setting. The one quirk of our world is a hollow Earth, so the sun's in the middle of the world. You actually see all the way across to the other side of the world.
So,
everything's
like
going
a Dyson
happy.
sphere, or?
Did you ever play? This is a really deep cut of a reference. Warriors of the Eternal Sun on the Sega Genesis, the D&D game.
No,
but
so
I know the hollow world thing you're talking about. Like you're living on the inside of the planet rather than the outside.
Exactly. So it was really big in kind of like speculative fiction at the turn of the century, where you'd go to the center of the Earth and there was another sun inside the Earth, and it's like a weird kind of pulp. Trend in fiction.
Okay, so that does sound like a Dyson sphere. So
similar idea. So yeah, okay. Real similar idea. So imagine that one day a portal opens up, a giant undead dragon attacks the sun, and it blows up. So no more sun in the middle. The sun, it turns out, was actually a giant crystal, and now shards of that crystal, the titular sun shards, have been spread across the world. Literally got blown up and shot into the sides of the planet. Through the dragon also got blowed up in that process. So there's chunks of that lying around, and through that portal is coming a plague called the Blight into the world. When that blight touches you, you turn into something like the Ruin. So it's like a necromantic leprosy. You're still alive. You're in a tremendous amount of pain. You're not a zombie, but you're not pleasant to be around, and you're contagious. So when you get that, people don't tend to want to be around you. That sounds really bad. Where does that not happen? Well, people found out that near these shards of the sun, the blight couldn't affect you. So now communities are building around these sun shards. However, depending on the size of the shard, they can burn out over time. So you might have 1 or 2 big shards in your city, but they're not going to last forever. So people need to go brave the blight to try to find other shards to keep that going. In addition to keeping the blight away, these are also the major sources of heat and light, which you need to grow crops. So they're the critical resource in this world. We talked a little bit about what the blight are. So they are people that are not around the shards. And some of them have found that using the magic of song called blight singing, they can actually manipulate the blight. So whether that's to heal people who've been affected by blight, revive undead flesh, stick different pieces of flesh together, they can do some kind of creepy things, but they're pretty ticked off about their lot in life. So they tend to lash out at people that they see kind of have it a bit easy. And they're like, you know what? Like, noise to this whole, living near a sunshine, we're just going to burn it all down. In contrast to that, you have the Delvers. These were humans that used to be, feudal knights that had access to airships and went up to where the sun used to be to figure out what the heck went on. And there they found something called the Star. It's got a type of sun shard there, so it's very, very safe. And because it's in the middle, the blight is filling from kind of the bottom up. They are very, very safe up there. people on there, as we saw in real history, have gone from feudalism, which wasn't great for most people involved, to something kind of like hyper-capitalism, like imagine Dickensian England. So you've still got some pretty strong winners and losers, but it's a little bit more egalitarian. But in keeping in that theme, you need to pay every day you're on the star. And if you can't pay, sorry, down to ruin land for you. What happens when you get behind in your debts? What can you do to not have that happen to you? Well, you can join a delving crew where you go down and try to get chunks of Sunshard or various pieces of technology from the old world that people want. Do that to earn money and hopefully pay off your debt. Unfortunately, you're paying still for every day, so your debts continue to accumulate. And if you use things like ammo on your expedition, the company charges you for that too. So it's a pretty rocky life for those people. They found a bunch of technology on the star they don't really understand, and they're kind of making work as best they can, but it's not really working for them. In terms of like overall play style, the joke I'll make at convention is they're kind of like steampunk helldivers. They jump onto the table, shoot a bunch of stuff to death, get what they need, get out. The Remnant are the elves of our setting. They are, I don't know what Andrew is doing in his free time. It's definitely not what I'm doing, but they're a little crazy. They are nominally elves, but they're probably closer to mimics. You'll see in the concept art I sent, they have what looks like bone faceplates. That's not a mask. That's their face.
Oh,
they don't talk.
They're very Norse like horror demon remnant kind of thing, like Wendigos.
Yeah, they're kind of our folk horror faction. So they communicate psychically, and they don't feed on normal stuff like we eat. They feed on emotion. So in the before times, they would be people that were bards or musicians or poets, really trying to, feed off the positive emotions of people in cities. After the sun exploded, a faction of them, not all of them, but some of them decided, you know what, we need to get back to our natural roots. And before civilization, elves historically would hunt people and then feed on the pain and agony of death as a strong emotional response for sustenance. So these are elves who are in kind of a murder cult that go around hunting the most dangerous game. They are run by our setting's druids called vine rots, who use a strange sort of root to do various natural magics. And if you are a good enough hunter, eventually they will devolve you into an animalistic state. So you see the big, almost looks like an owl bear in the concept art. That's a hound. If you are the world's best hunter, you get devolved into a monster and then just unleashed on people on the hunt. So little bit of a, if you come from a GW game, dark Eldar, dark elfy sort of feel. But they, on the table, they are a typical elf glass cannon sort of thing.
I kind of like the idea of like the hound thing actually being a promotion and not a demotion like it is in so many other worlds. It's like, yes, you get to become this pure natural beast.
Yes.
Because in a lot of pop culture, you always look at it as in, yes, but I'm losing everything that I am. But no, that's not how they look at it. I kind of like that.
Andrew had fun with these, and he did something that I think did a good job of taking advantage of the medium. We deliberately made that the cheapest model on the tabletop in the faction. It's a 1-point model. And a typical game's 15 points. It's on a 40 millimeter base. So if you think about conventional manufacturing, that would be a terrible idea. Making the cheapest model big, because then you spend a lot of money. 3D printing, who cares? It's 65 cents in resin more. So okay. we wanted to kind of play with the distribution model there too. But yeah, I did like that from like the background notes. Like the point cost of the table do not represent prestige in the lore as one might expect.
That is a fun idea. So we got the Shardborn, we touched on the ruins and the delve. So the Shardborn is the next one.
So the as some people at conventions have started calling them our crystal Pokemon, these are the fairy of the setting. So fairies being transdimensional beings, when the sun blew up and the blight came in, fairies got really screwed up because the blight has some ability to really mess with interdimensional beings. They actually devolved into basically a gray goo. And that was just kind of slopping all over the world, but some of it came in contact with the Sunshard, and that stabilized the goo, and it turned into a crystal elemental being, but it's got an elemental valence. So if you're in an area where nature was more aligned with fire, you'd form a crystal fire elemental. If it was more aligned with water, you'd form a water elemental. In places with natural balance, you'd get something called a locus, which is the big, almost unicorn-looking model in the concept art. We like to joke he's the Captain Planet elemental. They are now going around and they don't talk, they don't say anything, we can't really reason with them. They're doing something with the crystals, and people are noting that crystals are kind of cropping up in their wake. So people don't know what their plans are, but they seem to be migrating towards crystals, making more elementals, but then also making more crystals. So the people in the universe don't really know what they're doing just yet, and we're happy to kind of leave the mystery there for players to see unfold with time.
Sounds like the Scourge from Drop Fleet.
a little bit. Honestly, this was the weird one. Andrew came up with the idea, and like, what the heck do you do with that on the table? So I think have found an interesting way to make them a strong scenario faction. We definitely have some story beats for them and some future stuff that I think will be interesting. But one thing I have noticed is there's not a lot of elemental armies in games. So like Kings of War famously has forces of nature, but it's not something you typically see in like the GW archetype. There also aren't a lot of crystal armies. So you had like the Shard in the old FASA game Vor. But outside of that in wargaming, that's not really a common conceit. So I wanted to try to do something really different with these guys as opposed to the others, which I think are a little bit more tropey.
I like the crystal idea. It's kind of like for on Necron bases, the crystals, but the crystals are the focus, not the Necrons.
Oh, and you can have a ton of fun with these 3D printing too. So, I struggled with, watched a zillion Vince Venturella videos actually painting crystal properly with acrylic. And then one of our community was like, "Oh, wow, you worked really hard on that. I just printed it in clear resin and then painted the bits that were crystal." Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, sure. That works too.
Oh, that's amazing.
So, yeah, no, I think that there's lots of fun things one can do with these.
Oh, it's like, you've worked really hard on that. I didn't bother. Look, it's just as good.
Stop.
Well, yeah, I don't disagree with that. I mean, I've got some custodies sitting here, and, how do you, what's the best way to do a gold look, Well, I actually got chrome paint and put a yellow candy over it to make it look like gold. Like,
he could have just got the metallic, but no, he did it in like 4 steps.
I'm shocked you didn't do what the folks online have been doing, which has been electroplating the models using actual gold.
I actually just saw that, and I do want to try it. The paints what's the word for it? Process the paint. It's almost like a contrast because you got like certain things you have to do in certain steps.
Yep.
But it's it's just a gloss primer, and then like it's an actual chrome spray. You have to airbrush it. You can't brush it, and then it's just a clear not acrylic. It's the stuff that makes you. Yeah, maybe it's enamel. I don't know. I get a bad headache when I use it, but it's shiny. Like it's legit. Looks like metal. I do want to do the metal plating though, because holy cow, that looks so good.
A lot of fun.
I've got like a philosophical question. Would that count as being painted?
I'm going to argue yes, because I watched a video on the process, and you have to use a graphite primer.
I would also argue that the process is probably harder than painting, even though there are some like. No. You have to learn how to do it, George. It's not just a matter of I'm going to sit there with a brush and brush it on. You have to learn how the process works. That's a lot more work.
You got to take a fluid, you get a positive and negative charge, you get the positive charge or whichever onto the metal, the other charge onto the model, you put them in the fluid, and boom, it's done. Like,
okay.
It's no different than a paint process. It involves liquid and electricity at the same time together. That's fair.
I would say, like, if contrast and speed paint is just a tool, then this is also just a tool. I'd like.
Well, like I said, you have to put it's a specific graphite primer that attracts the metal because it's graphite. So
yeah.
So looking at this and just looking at what you've got, far-flung thought, would you rather expand on the faction to try to maintain play balance, or add faction and then try to maintain play balance?
So we, by design at the start, wanted to go wide with factions as opposed to deep into each faction. Coming from one of my favorite games being Necromunda, one of the things I love about Necromunda is every gang has a very distinct playstyle, and every gang does not feel the need to do everything possible because the buy-in cost is so affordable. You can get a Necromunda gang for under $100 pretty easily. And if you've got a Vansar gang that you love the shooting of and see a Goliath gang and think, that's a lot of fun, I think I might want to do that. You don't try to do that in a Vansar way. Just buy the bloody Goliath gang. I think our design philosophy is it's more interesting for people to have a very unique experience with a faction and be able to do a few different things a few different ways. And frankly, it's easier for us to balance. It's better to balance from a SKU perspective. This is a hobby company. I'm not looking to retire running this company. At best, I'd like to lose less money doing it. So I think, for us, like the types of games I like to play, Eden was very much the same way. You offer a lot of different factions, let each faction do its own unique thing. There might be some similarities down the line. There's only so much design space we have to work into, but that is something you might see 1 or 2 models for each faction that we have right now come out in the next 3 years. We're much more focused on getting the next 6 factions out, though.
Yeah. No, that's fair. The thing I love about questions like that is there really isn't a wrong answer there, because you can go either way, and in theory, it's the right way to go.
Absolutely.
When's your Kickstarter going live? It is quite short, right?
That is also a great question. November 19th is the stated go date. We have not got approved, but I'm optimistic that should be not too much of a hassle. We're not trying to resell something that we don't own the IP for, et cetera, et cetera. But they got to review it.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah, no, we're looking to go the 19th.
Nice. On the website, there is... Bring the website back up, Jason. There is a subscribe thing down the bottom if you want to get news and updates, and there's like an alternate art thing that people get from signing up.
So you get an alternative... it's an alternative pose. You get a free STL of a Locust, so if you really like those crystal Pokemon, you can get a fancy-looking leader model for your starter set.
For those that are painting them up, as opposed to just, printing them clear and cheating, I'm being facetious. How should they paint them? I know their own way is the thing, but like Jade, print. How did you do yours?
That is a great question. So I did mine in colors that made sense to me. So the fire elementals, the blazes, I painted in a transition from yellow to red, so going through the oranges. The earth elementals, earth is a little bit harder color, so I think I did a purple to blue to green. But I can see any answer there being kind of the right thing. And then the locust, what does Captain Planet look like? All the colors mixed together, so white. Cool. Okay, and did a bunch of purple and blue shades in the shadows. From a lore perspective, there is no right answer. The Delver companies all are going to have a different paint scheme. There is not going to be a studio paint scheme that says this is what your company may look like. There is not going to be blazes are always red. Captain Planet is always white answer. There are going to be crystal impurities that cause different Bragg refraction, which causes them to be different colors. Sorry to give the super science answer there. I know it's a fantasy game. Magic, a wizard did it. That's why they're green. So we're giving players a lot of freedom there.
No, I like that. Crystals are also something that's a lot of fun to paint too. I had a lot of fun doing Jade back in the day. On something that was supposed to be a wooden doll, ironically. But it was just a stupid idea I had in my head, and I needed to get it done. Not that I have a habit of doing that or something. You said holding up a Smurf that was supposed to be a halfling.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing. The important thing is people have fun. That is really what it comes down to for me. Is I'm not looking here to be the fun police. If people want to paint their Delvers hot pink, go for it. Have a good time with it.
I mean, fun is the name of the hobby, right? Otherwise,
exactly.
Why are you doing it?
Yeah.
I don't know. So, November 19th, I think as far as the interview itself is concerned, we've covered a lot. Anything
Yeah.
that you can think of that we haven't gone into? Or at least
Um,
from the stuff that you're happy to talk about and you don't want to save till the launch.
Oh yeah, no, we're really happy to talk about most of it. I think the only thing I would say is if you're interested in the game mechanically, it's a D20 based system. Much like Dark Age, its rolling low is better. So if you have dice that are terrible for D&D, this is the perfect game for you. Save those dice for here. You will
Bruce will
be
be
putting
happy.
up a storm.
Bruce, you'll need to do an all-in backing on this because you will excel at this game.
I actually have the rule book up. It's a 47-page document. The layout is actually really nice. Like you were saying earlier that you were kind of like you struggled to kind of like fit everything. You've done really nicely in this. It's all laid
I'm a perfectionist,
out in a way that makes
so
sense.
no, thank you. I appreciate that. I had to learn how layout works, and yeah, that was a beast. I mean, as you know, anytime you make anything, you know where all the mistakes are. You know all the things you tried to hide. It kind of gets into anyhow, as I mentioned before, it's a 2x2 table game. We do also offer scenarios for 3x3 for larger games. 15 points is the nominal point size. That's what our starters are. So you'll see the starters on our website and on the Kickstarter soon. They tend to be 5 to 6 models. If you went with the most elite army in the game, you'd have 3. I think the least elite army you can possibly build is 7. So very, very small model count. So if you're a little intimidated by the hobby, this is a great game for you. The biggest feedback, I think the biggest compliment we've gotten is when we've shown this at conventions, people that just play board games were able to figure this one out and it made sense to them. So if you come from a
very big compliment.
Yeah, I'll take it. I'll take it. You can get them over the using a tape measure bit, but once you get through that, if you've played any D&D, any Pathfinder, you know what a target number is. So what's the number I need to hit? Okay, let's go through the math. Let's add some modifiers. You need a 14 or lower. Roll the dice. Cool, I got it. Great, done. People are able to kind of get that. You can play on a kitchen countertop, again, thanks to the 2x2. In typical game time is around 45 minutes. So really tried to keep this one quick and easy. I can go through other mechanics, but that's really kind of the high-level gloss. Trying to think what else we normally talk. We talked about the background. We talked about the rules. We talked about the different factions. We have fables, which are mercenaries. They're the big reason just getting those sculpted is kind of the last bit we need for the initial launch to go. So that is the reason we are doing this. We talked about all the links in social media. Yeah, I think that's really it for the overall highlight of the game.
Nice. At this particular point in time, my layout is a Word document that I've tried to make look really pretty. So you're doing very well.
I'm happy to share tips and tricks. Really, offline, if you want to talk about that, I can get all the nitty gritty and kind of the silly things I've had to figure out for myself.
It is the thing. I get it.
Yeah.
All right. We are going to discuss some hobby. You are more than if you've got some hobby, join in. If this is the point where you want to jump off, then by all means, no problem.
If you guys don't mind me being here, I normally listen to the show, so this is like I get to listen to it before anyone else does. This is great.
Trim, glue, prime, paint.
Let's start with the guest then. What have you been up to? I know you kind of held something up very, very shortly at the start.
So super high quality webcam footage. So this is a conscript and a deckhand from the Delver faction. I just finished putting washes on these. So I had to do the quote unquote studio stuff for us. Originally, I didn't get a chance to kind of fun paint, so this is me in advance of a convention, hoping to get some actual just genuine pickup games. Throwing some stuff together. I've been having a fun time with I just got a Harder and Steinbeck airbrush, so the Evo there. That's been great, playing with the new Vallejo game airline. Also, AK Interactive Deep Shade washes. If you like the GW acrylic washes, highly recommend these. They are very affordable. They dry super matte, and they don't do the GW coffee stain thing. So,
nice.
Other than that, got some Trilaterum, which is a game by Trenchcoat Miniatures. It's 15mm sci-fi. Super fun beer and pretzels game. They do a lot of really cool like homages to old Rogue Trader GW stuff, but they also do kind of wacky stuff. So they have like mecha emus to go invade Space New Zealand, which was a bit of a meme. So Tim also does it with them, a bunch of historical stuff. So somebody from Australia paid him to make the Emu War rule set. and he had emu sculpted. And the sculptor,
that's him. Okay, yep.
Yeah. In a fit of fancy, was like, well, you also do a sci-fi line, so here's sci-fi emus. And then he's like, this is hilarious. Let's make a whole faction out of it.
I love this so much. I haven't ever heard of this game, but I need to have sci-fi mech emus in my life.
Highly recommend. Definitely. I think it's trilaterum.com is their website, which is the name of that game, but it's all of Trenchcoat Minis on there. Really fun time.
We've discussed the Emu War a couple of times in the past. For those that aren't familiar with it, farmers in Western Australia were complaining about emus damaging their crops to their local governments. And the answer to this was that they were going to get the army involved. And so the Western Australian government declared war on the emus, and they lost. It's a real thing that actually happened. It's not just a story. It's hilarious.
My favorite bit is if you go to Wikipedia, like any war, they cover, warring parties and then casualties, and national pride is the only one listed.
There's a video game that somebody has made of it as well, but I haven't actually played the video game yet.
Oh my.
Somebody's made a movie of it, and it looks ridiculous.
Love it.
Y'all fought a war against emus. That is ridiculous.
Oh yeah.
I'll try to be a good podcast guest. So that's me. So how about you all? What do you all have on the hobby desk?
I suspect that I know the answer to Soxus, but I'm going to ask him anyway. What have you been up to, Sox?
Nothing.
Being frustrated.
Yeah. So, not just am I dealing with the household landlord issues. I was in the middle of writing a midterm paper for my second master's degree. So, I'm going through officer school right now.
Yep.
Advanced officer degree.
He's tired of working for a living.
I've got a stack of about, if I was going from the floor, stack of books about this high of Air Force doctrine and military theories and Air Force history, leadership books.
Fun times.
So that I'm reading. So hopefully, I'm actually going to be going back home to Utah for a couple weeks, and so I'm going to be getting some stuff ready to take back to me. Some Dystopian Wars, my soulmate faction. I'm going to take that back with me for those 2 weeks, so that while I'm visiting family and got nothing going on, and I'm just sitting around the table, I'll just pull out some stuff and hopefully have.
Are you driving or flying?
We're flying.
Oh, okay.
That makes
We
sense.
are not driving from Alabama to Utah because that would be, with all 7 of us, no.
Why
That
not?
would be about,
That's laziness, Sox.
that's about 3 days of our trip just driving there, and another 3 days on the way back. Just
It's only 6 days.
out of the 2 weeks that we're going, I don't want to. No.
I'll be fine.
Yeah.
The kids
we're not gonna
notoriously love really long car trips. There's nothing
they
bad
don't.
that could ever go wrong here.
They don't
George.
love them, but it's good for them.
It is good for them, but no, it's a terrible idea. Don't do that. George,
I
don't
have
tell me I'm the
not
only
done-
other one here with hobby.
No, I have hobby. I just haven't done anything with it. Owen didn't get to see it, but I have to reassemble a bunch of my Sylvaneth because
Oh yes.
the case
Carrying
fell
case.
on the floor. But the good news is, because it was in a carrying case, all the parts are contained. So
Yeah, that is definitely a bonus. Yeah.
Are these the plastic kits, or is this some of the older metal stuff?
no, I don't. So for your reference, if it's metal, I will just automatically not play.
Okay.
If I have to deal with metal, I'm not going to play the game. I tried to do Infinity because it looked cool, but it's just like wasn't cool enough to deal with pewter. I grew up in the pewter era, and I did a Corrin army because I was doing 40K and fantasy, so I did Corrin so like I could reuse a lot of my stuff, and I had those horrible, terrible pewter bloodletters that were like this, and it just I can't do pewter anymore.
I also notoriously hate metal, but I don't refuse to work with it. I play Bushido, so I have quite a few metal models. It's the one reason that I resisted for a long time. But I love Bushido so much. It works really. It's one of my. I think it's one of the best rule sets in the market right now. Just purely from a rule set point of view.
I like Bushido a lot. And sorry to step on your hobby progress. I do want to just call attention to, because I'm making a 2x2 game. There's kind of two trends in small scale games. There's the Bushido answer, which is everyone has action points and you keep track of them outside of your activation, and it gives you an incredible tactical depth, but it's a lot of bookkeeping.
Yep.
We went the other route, which is alternating activations, but you spend AP on your turn with some Overwatch. There tends to be kind of two schools there. We didn't want to touch the AP system because Bushido did it so well. Like we couldn't do it better than that. So
yeah.
No, I'm a big Bushido fan, and I totally agree.
Yeah, it's if there's one thing about Japanese mythology that you have to get right, it's a duel, right? And I don't think anybody else has ever got close to how a sword fight in that game feels like an actual sword fight. It just works really well. The bluff is just that right amount of bluff. Like you've got you're picking how many defense dice and how many attack dice you have. It's not until you both reveal at the same time that you know what you've got and you're working with. It just works.
Have you played the alchemy system, the old French game?
No.
Similar idea to solve that problem. They use a deck of cards. You get 5 different attack types, and it's like a 5-way rock paper scissors.
Oh, okay.
Gets to the same thing, but I think I like the Bushido system better.
Yep. Interesting idea. I have actually been doing some hobby. First things first, my drop fleet came in, and I'm a very happy boy.
Nice.
We did a group order between me and some friends. Ironically, we didn't realise till afterwards that I missed out on asking somebody. Sorry, Mark. I apologise to Mark on audio because he is a Patreon. But yeah, I haven't had a chance to go through it. I mean, I've looked at it online already at this point, but I wanted to have the physical rulebook. As much as there's part of me that keeps on wanting to move to digital because it's less to have to carry around, I just find a digital rulebook harder to navigate. I prefer having something physical. I can mark the pages that I want to mark. I can learn where it is. You can't really learn a digital book. I also got myself a copy of the Rumble Slam rulebook because I've never had a copy of the second edition of that. Ironically, I didn't know this, but they are different sizes. I thought they were the same size. Another game that I love. A lot more crunchy than people think it is. Yep.
I'm still just very reminiscent of the first Drop Fleet rulebook, where it was more like a flight manual and actually laid open so much easier.
Yes.
True. That lengthways spine was problematic for store shelves, though. Which is why they moved away from it at TT Combat. Oh, I do agree, it did lay flat easier. Basically, rather than... The original one, rather than being a book like this, was a book like that with the spine here.
Yep.
Just because I don't know how long ago you discovered. Like, you mentioned that you've kind of been into it now, but I suspect that's more modern day rather than originally. I also bought something Games Workshop. It's the last of the models I need in order to play Kroot as Combat Patrol, which is like... I bought into the Kroot because I've wanted them for like 10 to 15 years. And now I can do it without having to play an actual game of 40k that I don't want to play. I love the world of 40k. I don't necessarily love the rule set as much. Though I haven't played 10th edition. I've heard nothing but positive things. And I'm not buying any more new games. I refuse to buy any more new games. Oh, wait, what's this?
Called Worms.
I really enjoyed playing Dead Man's Hand at PAX.
Nice.
So I may have bought a few things.
Shame on you, Bruce.
I will probably do an unboxing of these. I haven't actually opened them yet, but I'll probably do an unboxing of those at some time this week. He says, try not to drop everything.
I did forget to mention, I did back a project, and I said I was probably going to.
This is the one I think it is, isn't it?
The Teenage
Turtles?
Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
Not SF, not Super Fantasy Brawl reboot, but the actual,
the
actual
tested or whatever it was called, Unrivaled.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
the one
I did back that. Yes, because it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I mean, it's. I'm of that era and that generation. I need to have this game, so I did back that one. Obviously the campaign was successful, but I'm super looking forward to the process on that coming to my door now.
It did look really, really good, and I've never heard anybody talk bad about the game itself. But yes, as Socks kind of touched up, I have also started finally painting my worms that arrived a little while ago. This is just base coating at this stage. I think I have like 8 models left to go. But I've been deliberately taking my time on this just because I am using spray cans, which are notoriously a pain in the rear end to rely on because they're so unreliable with how they work. But even
at least it's the right season for them.
That is true, but we're only probably a few weeks away from them being useless again. That is all I have left. So like 8 to 10, that's all I've got left to paint at this stage. So I've been trying to work really hard. I've kind of been busy doing everything else, but I'm getting there.
I love that there's a separate sheep model. That just warms my heart.
Yeah, the sheep definitely needs to be done still, but I'm not painting that skin tone because that would just be done. I'm going to paint it white. So I also, while I was in the garage sorting things out yesterday, found something rather notorious. I don't know if either of you actually saw my post last night, but assuming that you didn't, do you know what this is?
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
I'm guessing
you're a bag of shame.
This is the dice bag of shame. So I'm quite frequently teased on this podcast about how much dice hate me. And it all starts with what's in this. I had a fairly notorious tournament experience about 10 years ago at this point, where I went to a two-day 40k tournament and essentially rolled nothing but 1s and 2s for the entire weekend. I lost everything really badly. I think I had like maybe one game that was technically close, but I felt like I was being humiliated the entire game, which is it's just a 40k thing, right? Because you can feel like things are going badly to the point where you're probably closer than you think you are, because that's just how the game works. But yeah, this is quite literally the 4 sets of ChessX dice that I have never used ever since. Because I got told, because it wasn't just me, I had several witnesses to this all weekend. So just never use those dice again. Those dice are cursed. It has not just been these dice, like just generally dice don't like me. Specifically these.
It hasn't stopped, Bruce.
Yeah,
Your
D6s don't like me.
It's because he keeps buying dice for the northern hemisphere, not the southern.
Well, the ones from Oz Dice do seem to roll well. I haven't played them in a game yet, so they haven't had a chance to betray me yet.
Once again, that's because they're formulated for the Southern Hemisphere, just for you.
But it's not tested until an actual game starts. That's where they will betray me.
Is this like the toilet thing, like the water?
Yes.
I love
it's
it.
Exactly that. What scale are you shooting for on this game? I don't think you didn't mention
that's actually
it,
a good point.
Yeah. Sorry, great question. We are I would call heroic 28. It is not full so like 5 size comically large hands, but it is definitely not true scale 28 either. Like the hands are a little bit larger for ease of painting. It just got it looks right.
Yeah.
That end, it means that they won't shatter when you look at them.
Yes. Yeah, no, I think our models are kind of thick generally too. It's 3D printing. It would probably be tolerant of things that were a little thinner than we go for, but integrity was important for us because I'm a klutz and I haven't broken anything yet, which is probably a pretty good stress test.
Nice. All right, I think that's going to be it for hobby. We have some upcoming events, George.
Tournaments, demos, conventions, that kind of stuff.
Melbourne Figures Painter Collective is meeting on the 1st of December. Ignore the date there, I haven't fixed it. Once again, it's at the Gaming Arena from 12 till 5. Next up is the Archimunda is happening next weekend. So the guys that run the Arc tournament events is running a huge Necromunda campaign. This is the 4th, I'm going to say wave, or the chapter in their campaign. So 16th to the 17th of November. That is happening, pretty much all weekend. It's a $60 ticket for the 2 days. That's here in Australia. Go to the ARC website if you want details. Malifaux Bayou Brawl. I kind of explained this last time. It's a one model event. It's a tournament that you can play with one miniature. There's no excuse not to attend this if you're a Malifaux person. Unless, of course, you happen to be on the other side of the state like me. That might be an acceptable excuse. I can't be in 2 places at once. It should be a lot of fun, though. Sorry?
You could mail a finger.
I mean, I could. If I had have kept the second head, then maybe I could have left a head behind. CanCon is from the 25th till the 27th of January. That's at the Epic Exhibition Park in Canberra. There will also be a Drop Fleet Commander version 2 tournament happening there. Details are still yet to be confirmed, but that should be good. I will not be able to attend because I will be at work, unfortunately. And last but not least, we have officially been blamed for Drop Squad being delayed. It's upsetting. I say officially. It comes from Michelle. So, Michelle, we don't care. So, the Drop Squad Commander painting competition has been delayed. At this stage, it's being replaced by a Drop Fleet Commander painting competition. For those that don't know, Drop Fleet's release got delayed. And as a result, that's been why, because we were asking last episode, Socks, why it didn't end up happening. It probably won't happen at the end of last year. This is why, because Drop Fleet actually got released later than they was intending it to. So we don't have dates for when that'll happen, but it will be happening next year at this stage. Join the Drop Fleet Commander community.
And then one last event. When was that happening again, Owen?
The Kickstarter?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, the Kickstarter is happening on November 19th. So coming right up. Hopefully, by the time you listen to this, it'll be live. Do you mind if I hype 2 events local to me?
Go for it.
Absolutely. Go for it.
So we got Captain Con 2025 coming up on January 31st through February 2nd in Warwick, Rhode Island. If you like small-scale games like War Machine, like Bushido, like Sunshard Embren, hopefully you check this Kickstarter out, you like it. We will be there exhibiting. It's a really great small community. If you're in New England, swing by. It's a great time. We'll also be at Mayhem in Lebanon, New Hampshire. If you like small games, if you want to come check out that Emu War game by Trilateral, they'll be there too. That is April 11th through 13th in Lebanon, New Hampshire.
Nice. Socks, tell people where they can find us.
You can find us all over. No. We've got our Patreon, patreon.com/gettingtabled. Our website is gettingtabled.com. And then our most active social media is facebook.com/gettingtabled. And then we have our YouTube at youtube.com/gettingtabled. Please subscribe to us. We're getting close to our 1,000 mark. We'd like to get there soon. And then you can also join our Discord. And as a Patreon, you can also listen to us as JP and Shay have been doing all night, and it's been great. And then on X, it's at Getting Tabled, as well as Instagram is at Getting Tabled, and then our Threads is at Getting Tabled as well. And then Jason the Bruce has Twitch.tv/Jason the Bruce for whenever he's streaming, and his toy reel is youtube.com/toyreel.
Yep, we had an episode this week live on Thursday night. We were touching on some World of Warcraft action figures, just a whole selection of them. They were really pretty, actually. I'm not hugely into World of Warcraft, and they were just really
new
pretty.
Or classic or new ones?
These were new third-party ones. They were quite large, insanely detailed. They were quite premium, yeah. But otherwise, I think that's it. Thank you very much, Arlen.
Yep,
Thank you.
I'm not going to thank these guys. They don't care. I don't care about that.
You never get thanks.
Seriously, thank you all. I really do appreciate the opportunity, and genuinely, I look forward to listening to this as a podcast.
Yep. Audio will be out later today at some point. Video will be out on Thursday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For listening to Getting Tabled. Music used in this podcast was created by Eric Matyas at soundimage.org.
Back Sunshard.
Back Owen's Kickstarter.
That's what I said.